Brian Fitzpatrick uses Twitter, cites New York Times to publicly oppose President Trump's plan to reduce EPA regulations on auto manufacturing. Steve Sheets officially approved as Libertarian candidate for Congress in Bucks County, PA District 1, will be on ballot, with Brian Fitzpatrick and Scott Wallace in November 2018 midterm election. Brian Fitzpatrick gets no financial support from President Trump in 2018 midterm elections. President Donald Trump donated $200,000 to 100 Republicans running for Congress, including only 8 GOP candidates in Pennsylvania. President Trump donated no money to Brian Fitzpatrick. Dean Malik endorses Brian Fitzpatrick in Facebook announcement. Brian Fitzpatrick and Ukraine caucus issue statement to condemn President Trump's Helsinki meeting with Putin. Brian Fitzpatrick states impeaching Rod Rosenstein. Quote, "Not a wise thing to do. There was nothing more frustrating to me as an FBI agent than when members of Congress were not allowing us to do our work." Unquote. Endorsed by no labels, Brian Fitzpatrick and Problem Solvers Caucus propose sweeping changes to House rules to quote, "force compromise on immigration, gun control, environment." Unquote. Brian Fitzpatrick and Carlos Curbelo, RFL 26, co-sponsor new carbon tax bill. Brian Fitzpatrick tells NPR Radio, quote, "The president was manipulated by Vladimir Putin. Fitzpatrick frankly sickened by the exchange." Unquote. Between Trump and Putin. Brian Fitzpatrick joins Democrats voting to support climate change carbon taxes. Paul Mango endorses Brian Fitzpatrick in video announcement. Brian Fitzpatrick joins Democrats to release public statement on President Trump's, quote, "deeply subservient behavior," unquote, toward Russian President Putin. Brian Fitzpatrick demands President Trump, quote, "must acknowledge that Putin directed Russian actors in 2016 election. As a former FBI special agent, I support our intelligence community, and I stand by their conclusions. The president must acknowledge that Putin directed Russian actors to interfere and undermine our democratic process. Russia is not our ally and Putin is a KGB thug." Unquote. Brian Fitzpatrick cancels local People for Trump event, joins Democrat Nancy Pelosi speaking at climate action protest in Washington, D.C. Brian Fitzpatrick appears in public in red high-heeled women's shoes as part of feminist Democrat gender violence protest event. David Summers, Bucks County, PA Republican committee person and Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick campaigner, indicted on federal wildlife smuggling charges, faces 35 years in prison. Brian Fitzpatrick, quote, "I'm pleased that EPA Director Scott Pruitt has resigned as EPA Administrator. I'm hoping that acting EPA Administrator Andrew Wheeler will be a more willing partner." Unquote. Brian Fitzpatrick accepts endorsement of anti-gun activist and former Democrat Congressperson Gabby Giffords. Quote. Fitzpatrick, in a statement, said he is grateful for her endorsement. "It is a testament to the work I do to not worry about party labels and to do what is best for the people of Bucks and Montgomery counties." Unquote. Brian Fitzpatrick joins only 121 Republicans to vote yes on failed amnesty compromise bill H.R. 6136 allowing chain migration, diversity lottery, no e-verify, no defunding of sanctuary cities, allowing DACA amnesty for millions. 4 days after Scott Wallace demands Scott Pruitt resignation, Brian Fitzpatrick joins Brendan Boyle, DPA 13, in press conference to demand resignation of Trump EPA Director Scott Pruitt. Brian Fitzpatrick says migrant families separated at border should be reunited immediately after visit to Texas detention center. Quote, This is a place where they need to be taken care of until we fix the problem that was created by this policy of separation that was a terrible policy. I think people realize that now we need to fix that." Unquote. Democrat Scott Wallace demands immediate resignation of Trump EPA Director Scott Pruitt, challenges Brian Fitzpatrick to join him. After Brian Fitzpatrick opposes Trump executive orders on federal employees, Pennsylvania AFL-CIO union endorses Brian Fitzpatrick. Brian Fitzpatrick interview. "I am a check on Trump," opposes, both party and president, with votes against Obamacare repeal, legislation protecting Robert Mueller. Quote. Fitzpatrick framed himself as an independent voice willing to buck both party and president. Fitzpatrick has sought to distance himself from Trump. "Most people in our district would tell you I am a check on Trump." Unquote. AFL-CIO union endorses Brian Fitzpatrick after opposing Trump executive orders on federal employees. Brian Fitzpatrick charged taxpayers $290,000 for campaign-style mailers. Brian Fitzpatrick opposes Trump executive orders on federal employees, supports federal employee unions. Brian Fitzpatrick joins Democrats, signs discharge petition to allow DACA amnesty for millions. Brian Fitzpatrick joins Democrats, bashes Trump EPA Director Scott Pruitt. Brian Fitzpatrick joins Democrats to force vote allowing DACA amnesty for millions. Brian Fitzpatrick joins Democrats supporting DACA amnesty for millions. Brian Fitzpatrick funded by Paul Ryan Super PAC after supporting Democrats on DACA amnesty petition. Brian Fitzpatrick, water contamination, outreach funded by Paul Ryan Super PAC supporting Democrat DACA amnesty. Brian Fitzpatrick and Scott Wallace win PA District 1 congressional primaries. Brian Fitzpatrick schedules gun shop meet and greet, then cancels. Brian Fitzpatrick joins Democrats to force vote allowing DACA amnesty for millions. Brian Fitzpatrick says he supports term limits, does not sign the U.S. Term Limits Article 5 pledge. Brian Fitzpatrick joins Democrats, co-sponsors bill to protect Robert Mueller. Brian Fitzpatrick joins Democrats to warn Trump to stop attacking the FBI. Quote. Jim Comey is a man of principle and integrity. I have stated that repeatedly in the past, and I feel the same way today. Both the timing and reasoning for his removal clearly raise questions. Unquote. Brian Fitzpatrick joins Democrats, authors legislation to raise age to purchase assault weapons to 21. Brian Fitzpatrick supports banning military-style weapons. Quote. And we must stop at nothing to get there. Unquote. Brian Fitzpatrick promised to vote for concealed carry reciprocity, then voted against it. Brian Fitzpatrick joins Democrats to support DACA amnesty for millions. Brian Fitzpatrick joins Democrats to ban gun parts, increase taxes on gun owners. Brian Fitzpatrick asked in town hall, "Is Trump fit to serve?" Says, "We'll see." Quote. But one of the tenser moments of the relatively calm town hall came when Fitzpatrick was asked if Trump was fit to serve as president. Pressed after the town hall if Trump is fit to serve, Fitzpatrick told reporters, "I'm not a psychologist. We'll see. We'll see how this all plays out." Unquote. Brian Fitzpatrick joins Democrats supporting taxpayer-funded sex reassignment surgery for transsexual soldiers in the military. Brian Fitzpatrick joins Democrats, supports fired FBI Director James Comey. Brian Fitzpatrick breaks with Trump, joins Democrats to keep Obamacare, oppose Trump travel ban. Brian Fitzpatrick breaks with Trump, joins Democrats to condemn Trump travel ban. Brian Fitzpatrick joins Democrats, votes to keep Obamacare. Brian Fitzpatrick refuses to vote for Donald Trump in 2016 presidential election, writes in Mike Pence. Brian Fitzpatrick public statement on Donald Trump. Quote, Donald Trump's comments and actions are offensive and disgusting, and they cannot be rationalized or ignored regardless of context. This is why, as a former FBI supervisory special agent and federal prosecutor, I have refused to endorse either candidate, and reached the point that I cannot vote for either candidate. Unquote. Brian Fitzpatrick publicly denounces Donald Trump, won't vote for Trump in 2016 presidential election.